You've already said more in 10 minutes than most people say in a whole day, but we are trying to be interactive. So I know that Dhanarada Vatachi, my colleague here, has picked up something from a Twitter or a question or something.
Well, in fact, it's not so much from this, but from things I've been hearing generally. And this is a very provocative question. You've talked a lot about the world leaders and the powerful people, but often people in the North are now beginning to blame the climate crisis or look at a solution for the climate crisis being population control. And the suggestion is always it's somebody else's babies we're talking about, not our own. It's always, there are lots of poor babies. That's the problem. What do you feel about this when people suggest that this is the case?
Okay, you can answer this if you promise in under 20 hours.
In about 12 years ago, I wrote a book called Consumption versus Population, which is the climate bomb. And this was based on a whole analysis of all the continents in the world. The key issue is total amount of greenhouse gas coming out is the root cause of climate change. And this has two aspects: mismanagement, greed, or three aspects: mismanagement, greed, and lack of knowledge. Now, lack of knowledge, I think we're overcoming to an extent. Greed, very difficult to overcome. And mismanagement, we can do a bit better. That's what this is about: global governance and better management of our global resources, which is atmosphere, oceans, forests, which are global resources. These are global commons. Now, in this scenario, if you take per capita allocation, let's assume that the atmosphere belongs to all human beings. And I don't think there is any doubt about that. The moment you say atmosphere belongs to all human beings equally, then politics start. And let's assume that atmosphere belongs to all human beings equally. If that is the principle, then for one child born, as far as climate change is concerned, in the United States, Sweden, there can be 35 or 50 children born in Bangladesh. We are not producing maybe one more. So it is not a child-born issue at all. The consumption, we have done these equations very well, well debated, well discussed, and I think the issues have been buried about 10 years ago, that it is the consumption behavior, i.e. intensity of greenhouse gas per person, is the dominant factor. It is not the number of people.
Okay. You wanting to come back on that, or are we moving? No. The signs are being flashed, so we've only got a few minutes. So let's get in just one more specific thing about the conference itself. Earlier in the week, the small island states submitted a proposal seeking to limit the temperature, to take action to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees average. The general consensus seems to be here 2 degrees is the target. Where does Bangladesh stand on this?
Well, as a least developed country, it did say 1.5, but as a scientist, I know we have crossed 1.5 with all the loading that's already there. 2 degrees is pretty much inevitable. If we can contain within 2 degrees centigrade, we would have achieved something seriously. But let us remember, the loading is already there. This has not manifested itself in temperature. If what we call the angel scenario, if the whole planet, every person becomes an angel tomorrow, stop breathing, what happens in the next 20 years? The system starts keeping on loading. So if that is the line by which it goes, by doing the action, we'll bring the line lower, we'll not stop the temperature going up. Now, is it possible to reverse the temperature? Long shot. We must not allow to go beyond 2 degrees centigrade under any circumstances, because then we are forcing the tipping point to come towards us. How do we do that? We have to take drastic action. Minimum 20 degree decrease by 2020, minimum 40 to 50 degrees by 2050 percent degrees, and that is quite tough. It is easy to blame the leaders, but it's tough to show exactly how by what elements of activities are you going to do these.
But it's tough, but is it doable for this conference to take sufficient action to achieve that end?
20% is doable. We have to innovate, force, rapidly push some technologies forward. But it is doable. If we don't do that, you see, if we do not get the nearest marker, milepost, then we have missed big time. It is all going to build up. Next marker or the milepost will be much more different. Now, right now it seems a lot of passion around here in these walls and the corridors. But we have had Rio de Janeiro, 1992, you were there, and we have seen, the start of the climate convention. There was a pre-convention situation. There has been Kyoto Protocol, 1997. There has been World Summit of Sustainable Development, 2002. These have been mileposts. They have come and gone, and systems have survived, done well. But at every stage, we have to take action. Copping out or being out of the system like US did out of Kyoto Protocol is a non-action. And the disgrace that US faces today across the world is partly to be contributed to that, because people do not like unjust or immoral positions, whether it's Americans or a villager in a small island. Point of the AOSIS protocol or the proposal is a very serious one. Their lives are at stake. It is the lifestyle of Americans, it is the lifestyle of Europe, it is the lifestyle of the rich of China and India are at stake. But the lives of the poor of China and poor of India and the small island states and the least developed countries, that is a stake. It's a huge stake we are talking about.
Okay, I think we have to leave it there, but I think you'll be back. You're always on the scene, so thank you very much. Also, I know your wife is waiting, and like wives all over the world, they've heard it many times before. So thank you very much for coming in. It's always interesting, it's always provocative, and throws a lot of light on the subject. So thanks very much for coming in.